Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the May webinar series from Woodburn Accountants and Advisors on employing individuals in China. You have joined us for day 2, part 2 of this webinar series, where we will be looking at the criteria and requirements to apply for work permits and residence visas in China. Now, normally I start off my webinars with who are the newbies and who are the startups and who are the experienced China hands. If you are in one of these categories, please do type that into the chat box. It always helps me to understand the audience that is live today. So if you're a newbie, type in newbie. If you're a startup, please type in startup. And if you're an experienced China hand, you can just type in experienced. Thank you. How the webinar works is that I'm here to teach you. It's all about education. It's one of the first superpowers to succeed in the Chinese market. If you do have any questions or comments, please do insert them into the chat box. I will be taking time out in the Q&A to answer any and all of your comments and questions. There is no dumb question when it comes to China. Just ask away. The most important thing you have to remember is that in order to succeed in China, you need clarity and transparency. Without that, you won't succeed. So there will be a Q&A at the end of today's presentation, and I will be answering everybody's questions and comments. From a technical standpoint, please note we are using Zoom meeting. If something happens to me from a Wi-Fi perspective, it usually takes 1 to 2 minutes for me to reboot the system and log back in. And I will be logging back in to finish today's presentation. If it happens on your side where you run into technical issues, my only suggestion to you would be to log off and log back in again. A little bit about myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, and I have 17 years of experience in corporate services and compliance in China. My focus for the last 17 years has been to help foreign investors with their inbound investment into China, helping them in the pre-investment stage, the incorporation stage, as well as in the growth stage, which is always the exciting part in relation to China. I am also an author of a newly launched book on Amazon called The 9 Superpowers to Succeed in China, which gives you the right tips and tools to learn everything you need to know about the Chinese market and to design your own action plan. If you're interested in the book, please go to Amazon. You will find the Kindle version as well as the hard copy version. All right, so to get started on today's presentation, what we are going to be looking at is how to obtain a work permit and residence visa for foreigners in China. We're going to be looking at what is required in normal times and what is required today based on COVID. I have chosen the UK as a case study just to highlight what you should be looking out for in the jurisdiction that you are based in. So what we're covering today is China visas, all the types of visas that exist, China work permits, are you an A, B, or C talent? In Shanghai, they're offering startup visas, so giving you a little bit of background about what that entails. And currently what is happening under the coronavirus regime in regards to obtaining visas for entry into China. My focus today is on foreigners obtaining visas to go in. It is a very different system when looking at local Chinese who might be currently abroad looking to go back in. What you should be concerned about in regards to visa issues is that some companies ignore the rules, meaning they expatriate candidates, including their family members, to China prior to any work permit and residence visa being issued. I have personally seen people getting caught by the Public Security Bureau by not having the right papers to be working. We don't want to fall into that situation because no foreigner should experience something like that, especially in their start of their China journey. Some companies do not also instruct the rules and regulations to foreigners. Now, what I mean by this is The foreigners themselves who are applying for these visas should be the ones that speak to the corporate service providers directly. They need to have the transparency and the clarity about what to do, what not to do. I do not believe that it should be the HR departments explaining these things, unless they are physically going through the applications for those foreigners. In many instances, companies outsource this work, and it really should be the foreigners, their wives, their families, whomever it might be, their spouses, their partners, who discuss directly with whoever is involved in obtaining their visas to know what are the step-by-step procedures, what are the document list, what are the criteria in order to be able to get into China. In many instances, foreigners have overstayed their welcome in China. Sometimes even the wives have, or the spouses, because they did not have that clarity. And what happens then is at any point you are exiting the market, exiting China, you get caught in immigration, you're brought into a room, and then penalties have to be paid. So it's all about knowing what you can and cannot do once you've entered the country. So let's start off with chapter 1, which is China visas explained. And I have listed basically all the types of visas that are available to foreigners when they're going into the Chinese market. The first type is the tourist visa, which is the L visa. So if you are planning on doing a touristic trip to China, you would be applying for the L visa. If you are going into China for business, and when I say non-commercial visit visa, it just means that you are there for a specific period of time. That can be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You would apply for the F visa. Then you have the M visa, which is the official business visa, where you will have a company issue an invitation letter. That invitation letter is part of the document list that is then brought to the embassy in your jurisdiction where you're applying for the visa. And they will give you a visa that is, again, 30, 60, 90. You can get visas up to 1 year with multiple entry. If you're in places like Canada and the US, you could even apply for a 10-year business visa, again, multiple entry, usually with 30-day stays for each entry. If you are going to be relocating to China, the visa that you need to enter the Chinese market to then have your work permit and residence visa issued is the Z visa. That Z visa, I'll explain it a little bit more in detail later on in the presentation, is where certain steps have to happen in China first for your application. You take those documents to the visa office in your home jurisdiction, and they will then provide you with a Z visa. That is a one entry visa. Usually it's for 30 days, where then upon arrival, you've got a series of steps you then have to do in order to be able to get your work permit, your official work permit, and your residence visa put into your passport. You've got the student visa. That's if you're studying in the market. The crew member visa is if you are a foreign crew member on an airline, you would have a C visa. If you're a journalist, you apply for the J visa. Transit visas are those if you are staying in China in transit, and you need to apply for that. What most people do, though, is they apply for the L visa, which is the tourist visa. Transit visas are not really very popular. Then you've got the D visa, which is the actual residence visa. So it goes from the Z visa to the D visa. The Q visa is if you are visiting Chinese relatives in the Chinese market and you yourself are Chinese but have a foreign passport, you would apply for a Q visa because you're visiting relatives and they are issuing you an invitation letter to go see them. If you are visiting foreigners that are based in China, you would be, and their relatives, you would be applying for an S visa, and your relative would be issuing a letter saying, my son is coming, my father's coming, whomever, and they would then apply for a Z visa. Under the Q and the S, there are two categories depending on the amount of time you're planning on staying in the Chinese market, in the Chinese jurisdiction. So Then you've got two additional last ones. You've got the R visa, which is for highly qualified individuals, high-level talent personnel. These could be professors, lecturers, high dignitary officials, not diplomats, but high dignitary officials. They would be applying for the R visa. And then you've got the diplomatic and service visa that is then also issued. So just to recap all the visas before I explain the critical ones in order to be able to work in the Chinese market. You've got the diplomatic service visa, the R visa, which is really for high talent. You've got the residence visa, which is the D visa, Q and S if you're visiting relatives, Q if they're Chinese citizens, S if they're foreigners, transit, journalist, crew member, student visas. And then you've got the Z visa, which is the work visa, the M, which is the business visa, which is the official business visa, F, which is non-commercial visit, also related to business, but if you don't have an invitation letter, and then the tourist visa, which is the L. Okay. Today, we're going to be focusing on the Z visa and D visa. So what really is the Z visa? The Z visa is also known as the work visa, and it can only be issued if it is issued from a company that has been incorporated in China. So it's the company in China that is going to act as the sponsor that goes and applies for documents from different bureaus. One will be the Labor Bureau, that then has to be provided to the individual in their home jurisdiction. So it has to be couriered over. The person then takes those documents, goes to the embassy or consulate in their home jurisdiction, and applies for the Z visa. The Z visa is the only way you should be entering China in order to then obtain the work permits and the residence visas. Okay. If you're doing an employer change, you can either leave China and go through all this process again, or just do an employer of change procedure, which means that it reflects only on your D visa, not on your Z visa, because the Z visa is valid for 30 days upon arrival, so that you get all your work permits, and then you apply for the D visa, which is the residence permit. Apologies for all the jargon. It might get confusing. But what is really the Z visa? It is the work visa that you are obtaining in order to make that trip to China, where you're going to stay to work, and you apply then for the work permit and the residence visa. The D visa cannot be applied for overseas. It's the visa that you get upon entry when you're on the ground in China, and the Z converts into the D. What really is the M visa? The M visa is the business visa that you use. It requires an invitation letter from a company that is incorporated in China to invite you to come and visit their company on the business trip. Now, one thing that I've experienced in the past with clients is that you need to go to the Chinese consulate or embassy to know what the difference is between applying for a business visa and a tourist visa. In many instances, you might actually find that it's cheaper and easier in terms of documentation to apply for a tourist visa than it is to apply for a business visa. So check that out. If you want to get a longer term visa, because you're going to be traveling to China many times during a year, then go for the business visa and see whether you can obtain a 1-year visa with multiple entry. Usually each entry will only be for 30 days. In places like the US and Canada, you will have more ability to apply for business visas or M visas up to 10 years. In any other jurisdiction, so far, I've heard it's not possible. All right. So if you're just doing 1 or 2 business trips a year, I would actually weigh out the pros and cons of just getting a tourist visa or business visa. Nobody's going to catch you on that. If you're planning on doing more trips, more than 2 trips a year, I would definitely advise you to go on the business visa route. But then you do need the invitation letter. And the invitation letter has to have the CHOP, the company CHOP of the company that is inviting you into the country. Now, so once you have your Z visa and you're relocating to China, you have 30 days in order to be able to obtain your work permit and your residence visa. What you should be doing prior to that is evaluating whether you have the ability to fall in one of these categories of tier A, tier B, or tier C in order to be able to obtain your work permit and residence visa in China. Obviously, your HR department or the outsourced provider should do this evaluation to understand what are the chances of success to be able to obtain your work permit and residence visa. So in April 1st, 2017, there was this whole new revamping in terms of getting residence visa, work permits and residence visas in China. And basically this new system created a 3-tier talent grading system, which has criteria, and under each criteria, you need to evaluate where you are at, and it gives you a score. And depending on the total score that you receive, you will either get a tier A work permit, a tier B work permit, or a tier C work permit. All right. So what does that actually mean? Here is the categories that determine your points. So it's a qualification exclusive of point-based system. They look at the annual salary paid by the employer. The higher the salary, the more points you're going to gain. They will look at your educational qualifications. They will want to see your university degrees or vocational skill qualifications. You will get a certain number of points. Now, in places like Germany, where you might not necessarily go to university and have a university degree, you might have a specific skill set degree, like a technician or an engineer that doesn't have a university degree certificate, but has another form of certificate. And you just have to calculate that in the points scale system, okay? Because that will affect it. You also have to look at the work experience of the candidate. If the candidate has 2 years or less of work experience, they get 0 points. Most of the time, candidates who have 2 years or less of experience will not be granted visas. They always want people who have 2 years or more. They will look at the accumulative time the person has spent in China per year over their work experience life. They will look at the Mandarin proficiency. Just a note, even if you don't speak a word of Mandarin and you get 0 points, it does not mean that you are going to be completely removed from getting a work permit like the work experience item. The work experience item is you need 2 years or more. Mandarin proficiency, they're just going to look at that. Obviously, the more Mandarin you speak, the higher the score. The less you speak, the less the score. They will also look at the location of employment, meaning that if you're going to be based in a city like Shanghai, it will be trickier to get your visa than if you're going to be located in Wuxi, where they are looking for foreign talent to go there to expand on the businesses that are growing there. They will look at your age. So if you're in your 30s, you have a higher chance or higher score level than if you are in your 50s. And then there are extra credit items that you will also have to look at. But basically, it is a matrix chart with salary, qualifications, work experience, time spent, Mandarin proficiency, location of employment. You tick where you are at, a score is going to be generated, okay? Now, tier A means that you've scored at least 85 points. And this predominantly resides in the fact that you have, when you look at the educational qualifications or vocational skills qualifications, it means that you are in a level of high talent, okay? So, you know, if you read the descriptions here, you're a Pulitzer Prize winner, you are a leader in your field, and you're known to be a leader in your field. You are a leader in a well-known academic institution or in a Fortune 500 organization. Lo and behold, what is the outcome is that tier A, rarely you will get into that category, okay? It is really the highly talented and skilled workers that will fall under this category, okay? If you do fall under this category, life is made easier for you when you're applying for the work permit and residence visa. You'll get a green channel service. It'll take 5 working days to get everything done. Most of it is paperless. Moreover, you are less subjected to requirements of age and education, but let's be honest, you'll have a certain level of education because of the skill set that you have. So it's a bit of a vicious circle there in terms of what they indicate. But basically life is easier if you fall under that category. Tier B is where the majority of foreigners fall under. I would say probably about 90%, which means you've scored between 60 and 84 points, okay? It means you're a manager, you're a leader in a variety of different sectors, okay? I fall under 60 to 84 points, okay? Just to highlight here how that works. The issue with Tier B, like I said earlier, is that it really comes down to work experience. So you do have to have a university degree. If you don't have a specific university degree, but you have a technician's degree or engineering degree, you're going to have to show additional documentation of the level of education that has. And you have to have had at least 2 years of work experience in your field to be able to apply for the work permit, okay? Now, one thing I want to highlight about Tier B applicants, depending on the location that you're going into. So if you're going into places like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, what you need to be aware of is that the government will ask, or the Labor Bureau will ask the question, what are the true labor market demands for that role, okay? Is that foreigner really needed within your organization in order to then be able to apply for the work permit and residence visa? Or can that role be fulfilled by a local individual? And that's a back and forth negotiation. Then you need to show proof. You need to show in reality why you're looking to expatriate somebody to apply for the work permit and residence visa. What is the value add that they're going to bring into your local organization to show why you really need them? Okay. Now, that point is critical under coronavirus times. That is something that they are truly looking at right now. Why is this person really needed within your organization? It was less so prior to COVID times, especially for managerial roles. But it's become something that's been very touched upon now with coronavirus times. The Tier C is a program for individuals that are not planning to work in China for long periods of time, meaning that they might be on an internship program for 6 months or 3 months, and they will then fall under the Tier C program. So in France right now, there's a China-France interns program where they're trying to develop young talent in the country, young foreign talent in the country. And so they would apply for the Tier C. They would fall under the Tier C category and get the work permit for the specific period of time that they will be based in China. So whether that's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, usually these programs never really last more than a year. So generally speaking, prior to coronavirus times, what did this mean in terms of the work permits and residence visas? Well, since this new regulation or this new visa system came out in 2017, what we have seen in Shanghai specifically is that individuals that are 50 years and up, so foreigners that are 50 years and up, it is extremely hard for them to get their work permits and residence visas reissued, even when they own their own companies. So if you are targeting an expatriate group, our suggestion would be to target people between the ages of 30 and 50 to make sure that at least from an age requirement and work experience requirement, they fall in the right category. The work permit and residence visa is never guaranteed. So, and no service provider should be guaranteeing this to you. So our recommendation is to do a check prior to starting this process, where you provide the full background of the candidate to see whether they have the ability to obtain the work permit and residence visa, and a successful percentage rate should be provided so that you are fully clear on knowing what the success rate might be, okay? But this is now currently the situation with visas in normal times. It is never a guarantee. Your visas are valid for 1 year. A renewal process has to occur every year. And again, it's never a guarantee as to whether your visa will get renewed. So you need to have backup plans and solutions in place in case that doesn't happen. And the key is knowing and being transparent about it, that you tell the family, candidate, whomever, that this is the situation. In Shanghai, you also have something which is called the startup visa. And the startup visa is for foreigners that are already living in China, potentially under student visas or other types of visas, where they are now looking to start up their own organizations and looking to become entrepreneurs themselves. So Shanghai is providing these international students with these startup visas, especially if they are going to be based in science and technology parks or in incubators and whatnot, where they have 1 year to plan this company, plan what they're looking to do, so that eventually that startup visa becomes a D visa, a residence visa under their own company. Okay, this is specific to Shanghai. I am not familiar as to whether it is applicable to other cities in China. I just know it is an incentive program that is occurring for international students that are enrolled in MBA programs and are looking to develop they have their own entrepreneurial idea, and they want to make that investment in Shanghai. As mentioned, the visa is valid for 1 year, can be extended as long as your company has already been established, but you need to show reason why you don't want to be converted into your D visa. Okay. But it is a viable solution. It is sort of like an application procedure, because by obtaining your startup visa, you're also then probably obtaining the grants and subsidies being offered to be located in the science parks or in the incubators, and to fund then the development of this company. All right, now let's look at coronavirus times and what this means. And like I said, I'm using the UK as a case study as to how currently, today, you can apply for your work permits and your residence visas. And disclaimer, this is a guideline. You need to be able to contact the embassies and the consulates to know exactly what the criteria would be for you. You need to outline your background, and get advice from them in regards to what is required. Okay. So when coronavirus started, and again, a lot of this is based on Shanghai because I know the details in and out, the Shanghai Exit and Entry Administration Bureau, they provided a fast track service for foreigners, whether they just needed basically like a hotline, whether they need to get their visas renewed and whatnot. And that was basically on the ground, available to them. And it still is available to those that are on the ground in China. If you are collaborating with companies in China or you have your own company in China, you can ask your local team to reach out to the Shanghai Exit and Entry Administration Bureau to know what is the current situation in Shanghai specifically. This can also be related to places like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Beijing, but you need to contact the Exit and Entry Administration Bureau in terms of where that expatriate is flying into, okay? So that you know what the rules and regulations are upon entry. During coronavirus, as well as it's now still happening, there are many foreigners who have either had their contracts terminated or their contracts not renewed, and hence their visas or residence visas are about to expire. Now, in these situations, hopefully the termination is done mutually and it's done in a positive way that the company can then support that foreigner and the family with the Shanghai Exit and Entry Administration Bureau to extend the visas, because there may be issues in terms of quarantining, there may be issues in terms of just general relocation, there may be issues in terms of quarantining on the other side or zero permission to enter in the other side. So getting extensions is something that the Shanghai government has been very open and flexible about, It just needs that open communication with them in terms of your specific situation. For institutions with a relatively large number of foreign employees, so this would be really directed at those companies that have, you know, over 5 foreign employees employed by them. Normally, as a foreigner, you need to apply as an individual for your visas and your renewals and whatnot. But they're allowing companies that have 5 or more foreign employees to do this from a company perspective. So in the company's name, they are allowed to do these applications directly on behalf of the employees, which has been, again, a big help for foreigners that are located currently on the ground. Okay, what this is just showing is that the Shanghai government has been extremely adaptable to the needs of foreigners in China. It's not like they've been rude or kicked people out or made situations worse. I mean, you'll always hear those 1 or 2 stories out there, but you never know what the background is of that individual. In theory, Shanghai has done a very grand job, quite honestly, about helping foreigners with their paperwork, with having the right visas on hand, providing extensions, giving leeway for people to adapt into this new normal life. Exemption from overstay punishment. So normally, if you have overstayed in China, you will have a penalty that is bestowed upon you. It can be from anything between 5,000 RMB all the way up to 50,000 RMB, depending on how long you've done your overstay in China. They've done an exemption on this. My philosophy is this: please don't, if you are in a situation in Shanghai right now, don't fear the government bureaus. The best thing to do is to approach them, have a discussion with them about your situation, and see how they can help you, okay? The more transparent you are with them, the better you're going to feel and sleep at night and know actually what stages you have to do to either get out of the country, stay in the country, or whatever else. Now in Shanghai, most things are done bilingually in Chinese and English, which I think is also beautiful. Basically, you can register yourself upon entry into Shanghai online, do this by yourself. And you also have hotlines and government websites that are both in Chinese and in English. So you're not alone. You can also do this research yourself. I've put in the website here, which I'm just going to add in case people are interested to take a look at it. I'm just going to add that into the chat box. One moment, so that you all have it. Okay. Community support and 24/7 hotline. This has also been new since COVID has begun. So Shanghai has 52 overseas people service stations, which is basically immigration points, and 6 immigrant integration points. So you've got basically almost 58 different places that you can go to get information about the pandemic, get information about your current situation, and also take registrations to apply for masks. The Entry-Exit Administration Bureau operates in English as well, 24/7. There's a hotline number where you can reach out and get consultations as well, okay? There are other government service hotlines that are also in English language. I think you can also find it in Japanese and Korean now, where you can make a query, ask questions, get updates, explain your situation. And most of the time it's also anonymously, but it's a fantastic way of getting up-to-date current information. So currently in the United Kingdom, if you are looking to go into China, all right, as of 1st of December, diplomats have the ability to go with visas. No issues there. You can make the application and then you have to fulfill certain criteria. If you are looking to go into Hong Kong or Macau, you can also apply for visas Just know that if you're going into Hong Kong or Macau, you need to have the 21-day quarantine and stay at a hotel of your choice, paid at your own cost, and you have to go through that. All right. Visa applications for tourists, for business, are really not accepted at the moment, unless you can follow the following criteria. One, you can obtain an invitation letter, which they've now called a PU or TE letter, or a verification confirmation invitation, which is issued by the Foreign Affairs Office of the provincial government or the provincial Department of Commerce that you're planning to go and reside in or stay in. So for example, if you were looking to go to Shanghai, the company that is inviting you in Shanghai needs to go to the Foreign Affairs Office to apply for the invitation letter or verification confirmation invitation letter. Okay. So, and that's not easy to get. Currently in Shanghai, it takes a minimum of 8 weeks to apply for that. And you need to show reason as to why that individual has to come. That reason has to be valid to the Foreign Affairs Office. Okay. If you're looking to relocate to Shanghai or China, you need to have, as well as the invitation letter or verification confirmation, you also need the notification letter of foreigner's work permit, which you would have to get in any case if you were looking to relocate, okay? But you would need those 2 documents in order to be able to then get the Z visa. In the first one, just to highlight, that would be for you applying for an M visa, which is the business visa. If you are looking to actually get the Z visa because you're relocating, you would need the notification letter of foreigner's work permit and the invitation letter. Again, minimum of 8 weeks is required for that in both scenarios. Okay. If you have family members in China, whether foreign or local, that are in dire need of your assistance because of medical issues or death, then you can actually go to the consulate, embassy yourself, explain the situation. You will have to show proof of this situation in order to be able to get the visa. Okay. If you are a crew member, you're going to get the visa. That's usually done by the airline. If you are an applicant who qualifies for a high-level talent R visa, you can also go. Okay, but again, that's a skill set that you really need to prove, and you also have to show reason as to why you're going to China. So, you know, if you are a Pulitzer Prize winner, I mean, there's going to be a reason that you're going to China, which is probably a speaking event. And anyway, you've got all the documentation and invitation letters available from the company that's organizing it to be able to get the art visa. Okay. Don't forget all of the supporting documents that you're going to have to show. All right. Now, as of 15th of March, 2021, if you are a foreign national going into China for business reasons, and you have taken the Chinese vaccination, at least 1 dose, then you do not have to apply for a PU letter, which is the invitation letter, or the confirmation of verification letter with the government. Okay. But what that means is you need to show your vaccination certificate to the Chinese embassy or consulate in the UK that you have taken one of the 5 Chinese vaccinations and a minimum of 1 dose. All right. If you have, since March 15th, if you have, again, an emergency in China, again, whether it's local people or non-local people, you have to show proof of that emergency, and you can also then apply for the visa without having any letters or anything like that. They've just made that process a lot easier. okay? If you are an APAC business travel card holder, you can apply for the M visa with your original APAC travel card and the invitation letter that's issued by the company in China. You don't need the PU letter, TE letter, or anything like that. Okay, but you need to be an APAC business travel card holder, and then you can apply for the M visa. All right. Non-Chinese nationals in the UK holding valid Chinese residence permits will no longer be affected either, as long as they can show proof of that Chinese vaccination. So just to highlight, in these 4 categories, as long as you have had one of the 5 Chinese brands of Chinese-made vaccines, at least 1 dose, you can apply for a Z visa or an M visa to enter China. Okay? So I just want you guys to also be aware of that. That does not, however, mean, and this is why you should also be contacting them, the airlines, it does not mean that you should not also be having, when you fly, the negative certificates for nucleic acid and antibody tests. Okay? So you need to be aware of that. If you have taken the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, you cannot apply. Okay? You would still need to go through the old route of obtaining the PU letter, invitation confirmation letter, as well as the letter of for the work permit in order to be able to get the Z visa. Okay. So that's the current situation in the UK. That is a guideline that has been offered by the Chinese Visa Center, which opened on March 15th, and that is processing Chinese visas. My suggestion to anybody anywhere in the world is you should be reaching out to the Chinese embassy or consulate, speaking with them. You should be talking to the Chinese Visa Center as well, because you might find contradicting information. You should be speaking to the airlines to know what the criteria are. Be prepared for tremendous cancellation in flights going to China. So, you know, you might have to show proof of a flight ticket that will eventually get canceled in order to get the visas. It's all a bit of a vicious cycle right now in regards to this. If you have received all of this information and documents are required from the China side, make sure you know how to obtain those documents and what would be the timeline required for that. I would not trust any timeline at this moment. It's basically you'll get it when you get it, is the outcome. Be patient. The borders aren't fully opened, and I do not expect things to change much. I expect things to get slightly easier by the 1st of October. I think people are waiting for the summer holiday period to see what the outcomes are going to be, if there's going to be any peaks or anything like that. So I do expect things to get lightened up by the 1st of October, but I don't expect this whole visa process to change much within 2021. Just so you know, as of last week, quarantine has changed once again in Shanghai. Previously, it was 14 days quarantine in a designated hotel. Now it's 14 days in a designated hotel plus 1 week in your home residence, whether that's going to be the same hotel or in your actual residence. Okay, so it's 3 weeks of quarantine. So things are changing consistently. You need to also know the city that you are going to be going into and what the local regulations are in that city. Things are very different between Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and other areas where there would be direct flights going in. So you need to check on all of that. If it would be my suggestion, I would wait on all of this because I think it is an extremely painful process to go through, especially when there are no guarantees on timeline, dates, or I think cancellations happen left, right, and center. So just 5 ways you can work with me is all related to employment advisory, drafting employment agreements and handbooks, employee due diligence, employer of record service. We also offer assistance with work permit and residence visa applications. What we are doing currently is more of the company change work permit and residence visa applications versus actual new work permits and residence visas going into the country. with the last point, just want to highlight, very difficult to give guarantees in relation to those types of applications. So that's the end of today's presentation. Leanne, you're the only one that's shown up today. You've got all my details. So I think I'm just going to start with the questions. Maybe I'll unmute you. Hold on. Let me figure that out. 1 second. I think you can unmute yourself, actually. Oh, wait. No, can I unmute you? I think you can just unmute yourself. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Have you stopped the recording?
No, I haven't. I'll do that. Let me stop it now.
No one needs to see me.
There we go.